I thought my future mother-in-law was asking about grandchildren out of curiosity. Then she learned pregnancy could be dangerous for me. She smiled, folded our wedding invitations, and said, "My son deserves a real family, so don't expect ours to attend." We were sitting at her kitchen table with cream-colored envelopes spread between us. My fiancé, Andrew, was outside helping his father move patio furniture before the rain started. I could hear them talking through the open window while Patricia stared at me like I had just admitted to deceiving everyone. I asked, "What do you mean by a real family?" She placed the invitation in front of her. "Children who belong to both of you." I had only told her the basic truth. Years earlier, complications from surgery had made carrying a pregnancy medically risky. It wasn't necessarily impossible, but every doctor I had consulted warned me that trying could involve serious complications. Andrew had known long before he proposed. I told him about a year into our relationship because I didn't want him planning a future with me based on assumptions. I had expected that conversation to end us. Instead, he sat beside me on my couch and stayed quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm planning a life with you, Nicole. Not with some imaginary child who doesn't exist yet." We later discussed adoption, fostering, surrogacy, and the possibility that we might never become parents. We hadn't decided anything, but Andrew never treated my health like something I had taken from him. Patricia clearly saw it differently. I told her Andrew knew before he proposed. Her expression tightened. Men say things when they're in love. That doesn't mean they understand what they'll regret later. He understands. Or maybe he's afraid to tell you what he really wants. I pushed my chair back. She sighed as though I was the one making the conversation uncomfortable. "I'm trying to protect my son. By telling me we won't be a real family, I'm saying he deserves every option. He made his choice." Patricia lowered her voice. "People can make terrible choices when they think love will be enough." There was no point arguing. She wasn't confused. She knew exactly what she meant. I walked outside and waited in Andrew's car. On the drive home, he kept glancing at me. "What happened?" I said I wanted to wait until we were away from his parents' house. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. Was it my mom? The fact that he guessed so quickly should have warned me. Once we reached our apartment, I repeated the conversation almost word for word. Andrew's face changed. "She said I deserved a real family?" I nodded. He called Patricia immediately and put the phone on speaker. She answered cheerfully, but the moment he confronted her, her voice became defensive. "I never said Nicole wasn't family." Andrew replied, "You told her I deserved a real one." "That isn't what I meant." "What did you mean?" She paused. "I meant a complete family. Biological children. Our family continuing." Andrew told her that whether we had children was our decision. Patricia started crying. She said she had been blindsided by information that everyone had apparently hidden from her. She said she was worried Andrew was sacrificing his future because he was too loyal to admit what he wanted. I leaned toward the phone. Nothing was hidden from the person who needed to know. Patricia said, "I'm speaking to my son." Andrew's voice sharpened. "You're going to speak to Nicole because you owe her an apology." After several seconds, Patricia said, "Nicole, I'm sorry you interpreted my concern as an attack. I would never intentionally hurt you. I'm only thinking about Andrew." I stared at the phone. "That isn't an apology. I don't know what else you expect from me. I expect you to admit that what you said was cruel." Patricia sighed. "Everyone is too emotional right now." Andrew ended the call. He apologized and promised to make it clear that his mother was never allowed to discuss my health again. For a few days, Patricia stayed quiet. Andrew ignored the messages she sent him, and I started believing the confrontation had embarrassed her enough to stop. Then Andrew's aunt, Deborah, declined our wedding invitation. Her excuse was vague. She said something had come up and hoped we understood. 2 days later, one of Andrew's cousins withdrew. Then another relative messaged me asking whether the wedding had been postponed because of my health situation. I had never told that person anything about my health. Andrew called Patricia. She denied speaking to anyone. She said Deborah must have heard something elsewhere and accused Andrew of searching for reasons to blame her. That evening, I asked whether he believed her. "No," he said. "But I don't have proof." "She's the only person we told." "I know. I'll handle it." A week later, his cousin Emily sent him a screenshot. It was a message from Patricia. She wrote that Andrew had been manipulated into marrying a woman who had concealed that she could never give him children. She called our relationship a marriage built on deception and asked relatives not to encourage him to make a permanent mistake. At the bottom, she added, sometimes loving someone means refusing to support the choice that destroys their future. Andrew drove to his parents' house the next morning. I stayed home because I knew Patricia would use my presence as another distraction. He returned almost 3 hours later looking exhausted. She admitted sending it, he said. And? She says it wasn't a boycott. She was sharing her concerns. I laughed once, mostly out of disbelief. Andrew explained that the conversation had gone in circles. Patricia first claimed Emily had misunderstood her. Then she said relatives had a right to know the truth. When Andrew reminded her that he had known about my condition for years, she accused me of standing between him and his family. He told her that if she couldn't support the marriage, she shouldn't attend. She cried. His father, Dennis, accused him of humiliating his mother in her own home. Then Andrew's sister, Michelle, arrived and told him he was tearing the family apart over one badly worded comment. I asked, did anyone admit she lied? Andrew hesitated. No. That was how Patricia survived every confrontation. She would do something deliberate, then cry until everyone debated her intentions instead of addressing what she had done. I asked Andrew to stop communicating with her temporarily. Not forever. I wasn't asking him to erase his parents from his life. I wanted a few weeks in which Patricia received no information about our wedding, our relationship, or me. Andrew looked uncomfortable. I already told her to stop. She didn't. I'll make the boundary clearer. She understands the boundary. She just doesn't think you'll enforce it. He said cutting off contact felt extreme. I reminded him that she was asking relatives to oppose our marriage. Andrew insisted he could manage the situation without shutting her out. I asked what consequence she had faced so far. He didn't answer. The wedding stopped feeling like a celebration. Every notification made my stomach tighten. Some guests asked ordinary questions about hotel rooms and food. Others repeated things that could only have come from Patricia. One relative asked whether Andrew had considered exploring his biological options before marrying me. Another said adoption could be admirable, but he shouldn't be pressured into raising someone else's child. We hadn't even decided whether we wanted children. Patricia had turned private possibilities into a family debate. Andrew contacted relatives individually and corrected the story. Some apologized. Others said his mother was only trying to protect him. Deborah eventually admitted that Patricia had made it sound as though I had revealed everything after the engagement. When Andrew explained that he had known for years, she said, "Your mother didn't mention that." Patricia wasn't simply oversharing. She was changing the timeline to make me look dishonest. A few evenings later, Andrew's brother, Jason, came to our apartment. Jason normally stayed out of family arguments, but that night he looked embarrassed. He told us Patricia had called him several times. "She thinks Nicole is controlling you," he said. I asked, because I don't want my medical history discussed with the entire family? I'm not saying she's right. Then why are you here? He looked at Andrew. She told Dad that Nicole waited until after you bought the ring to tell you. Andrew shook his head. That's completely false. I know. You mentioned the pregnancy issue to me years ago. The room went quiet. Jason had just confirmed that Patricia's version was false. I asked whether he had corrected her. I tried. She said Nicole probably pressured you into remembering it differently. Patricia had created a story that could survive any contradiction. If Andrew defended me, I was controlling him. If someone else remembered the truth, I had manipulated them too. After Jason left, Andrew promised he would stop answering his mother's calls for a while. For 3 days, he did. Then Dennis called and said Patricia wasn't sleeping. Andrew answered. Patricia got on the phone crying. She said everyone had turned against her and that I was punishing her for caring about her son. Andrew spent nearly 40 minutes trying to calm her. I sat across from him while he repeated that nobody was punishing her and begged her to stop discussing the wedding. When the call ended, I asked why he had stayed on the phone. She was panicking. Then your father should help her contact someone qualified to help. Andrew frowned. That sounds cold. What she's doing to us is cold. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was tired of Patricia creating the crisis and Andrew expecting me to soften my reaction because she was upset by the consequences. A few days later, an email arrived in Andrew's inbox. The subject line said a fertility consultation had been requested and asked him to complete an intake form. At first, he assumed it was spam. Then he saw Patricia's phone number listed as the alternate contact. Andrew called the clinic. They explained that a woman identifying herself as his mother had requested an informational appointment on his behalf. Nothing had been confirmed because Andrew needed to provide his own consent and medical details. No private information had been shared, and no appointment had actually been scheduled. But Patricia had still contacted a fertility clinic for her adult son without asking him. Andrew called her. I could hear Patricia's voice through the phone even though it wasn't on speaker. She said she was only gathering information. She wanted Andrew to understand that he might still have biological children someday, even if I couldn't carry them. Then she said, "You don't have to throw away every possibility just because Nicole is sensitive about it." Andrew went still. He told her never to contact another clinic, doctor, or counselor on his behalf. Patricia replied, "One day you'll understand why I did this." After the call, Andrew looked shaken. I waited for him to block her. Instead, he said, "I need a few days to figure out what to do." That was when I stopped waiting for him to solve it. I opened our private wedding group that evening. It included relatives, members of the wedding party, and guests coordinating travel. It wasn't public. I wrote the post carefully. I didn't describe my surgery. I didn't name Patricia. I didn't include screenshots. I said the wedding was being postponed because private medical information had been shared without permission and several guests had received an inaccurate version of events. I clarified that Andrew had known about my health situation long before our engagement. No one had been deceived. I asked guests to contact us directly rather than rely on rumors. Before posting it, I showed Andrew. He read the entire message. "This is going to cause an explosion," he said. The explosion already happened. "I'm correcting it. Can we wait until tomorrow?" "No." He didn't stop me. Within minutes, messages began arriving. Emily apologized in the group. Deborah privately admitted Patricia had completely changed the timeline. 2 other relatives said they had declined because they believed Andrew had only recently learned the truth. Michelle called him furious. She said the post was obviously about Patricia and accused me of humiliating their mother. Andrew told her I hadn't named anyone. "You didn't have to," Michelle replied. Dennis called next and demanded that the post be removed. He said Patricia was crying and relatives were confronting her. I asked whether anyone had threatened or insulted Patricia, or whether they were simply asking why she lied. Dennis heard me. "This is exactly what I mean," he said. "You're enjoying this." I took the phone from Andrew. "I'm not enjoying anything. I wanted a wedding. I wanted to feel welcome in your family. Your wife turned my health into a campaign against me." He said Patricia had made mistakes, but didn't deserve public humiliation. Then she shouldn't have spread the story through the family. Dennis hung up. A few minutes later, Patricia sent Andrew a long message. She said she couldn't breathe. Her siblings were accusing her of lying. She had never felt so betrayed by her own son. Andrew sat beside me. "Would you consider taking the post down now that everyone has seen it?" I looked at him. "Why?" "The truth is out. The lie was allowed to spread for weeks." "I know. But the correction has to disappear tonight because your mother is upset? She's having some kind of breakdown." I asked, "What about the breakdown I've been having?" Andrew looked at the floor. He had no answer. I walked into our bedroom and took out an overnight bag. He followed me. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving for a few days. Please don't make a permanent decision while we're angry." "I'm not making a permanent decision." I packed clothes, medication, and my laptop. Andrew stood in the doorway asking me to slow down. He said we could block Patricia together. He said he understood now and would do whatever it took. I zipped the bag. "You could have done that before I packed." He started crying. Andrew told me he had believed he could protect our relationship without damaging his connection to his parents. "I never asked you to lose them," I said. "I asked you to stop giving your mother access to the person she kept hurting. I'll block her now. Now it feels like something you're doing to keep me from leaving, not something you chose because it was right." I stayed with my sister, Angela. The next morning, I called the wedding venue. The coordinator asked whether I wanted to postpone or cancel. I looked at the ring on my hand. "Cancel it. We lost part of the deposit, but I didn't care." When I told Andrew, he went silent. I explained that I wasn't necessarily ending our relationship, but I couldn't marry him while I felt like the third person in a relationship between him and his mother. He said he understood and asked whether he could come see me. I said I needed space. For the first week, he messaged me once a day. He didn't threaten, beg, or blame me. He apologized and told me what he had done. He blocked Patricia's number. He emailed Dennis and said he would no longer discuss me, the wedding, or our relationship. He told Michelle that anyone who wanted contact with him needed to stop treating Patricia's feelings as more important than her actions. I was relieved, but also angry that he had finally done everything I had asked only after the wedding was gone. Patricia began telling relatives I was isolating Andrew from his family. She said I had staged the conflict to control him. Michelle repeated that claim to Jason. Jason responded, Mom contacted a medical clinic behind their backs. How far did this need to go before you stopped defending her? That was the first time someone in Andrew's immediate family defended me without making an excuse for Patricia. Deborah sent another apology. She admitted she had withdrawn from the wedding without speaking to either of us because Patricia had sounded convincing. I accepted the apology, but I didn't reassure her. 2 weeks after I left, Andrew asked whether I would attend counseling with him. I agreed because he had already started going alone. Our counselor, Rachel, didn't let him hide behind phrases like keeping the peace. She asked what peace he had actually protected. Andrew answered, my mother's. At whose expense? He looked at me. Nicole's. It was the first time he said it without adding an explanation. 3 months passed. Andrew and I remained together, but we lived separately. I kept the engagement ring in a drawer at Angela's apartment. I wasn't ready to return it, but wearing it felt dishonest. Counseling was uncomfortable. Andrew admitted that he had spent most of his life managing Patricia's emotions. When she cried, everyone changed their behavior. If she became angry, Dennis pressured the family to back down. Andrew had believed he was reasonable because he never yelled. Rachel told him avoiding conflict was still a choice. Sometimes it meant protecting the person creating the conflict instead of the person being harmed by it. I never needed Andrew to hate his mother. I needed to know that when someone attacked our relationship, his first response wouldn't be to make the situation easier for everyone except me. Andrew kept Patricia blocked. He communicated with Dennis by email when necessary and skipped several family dinners. When Michelle told him Patricia was heartbroken, he replied that her feelings did not erase her choices. Fewer relatives believed Patricia after Jason confirmed that Andrew had discussed my health with him years before the engagement. Her claim that I had trapped him finally collapsed. Michelle called me after that. I didn't know Mom changed the timeline, she said. You never asked me. She was quiet for a moment, then apologized for accusing me of dividing the family. She still believed the wedding group post had gone too far. I told her she was allowed to think that. I no longer felt responsible for changing everyone's opinion of me. Patricia emailed me once. The message was long. She said she regretted using the phrase real family. She said fear had made her act emotionally because she loved her son. She hoped we could both acknowledge that mistakes had been made. Both of us. That was as close as she came to taking responsibility. I didn't reply. Andrew didn't ask me to. That mattered. One evening after counseling, we sat in his car outside the office. Andrew said he had been thinking about a courthouse wedding. Not now, he added quickly. Maybe next year. Something small. No family pressure. Why are you thinking about another wedding? Because I still want to marry you. That isn't enough. He looked disappointed, but he nodded. I told him I didn't want a smaller ceremony built around Patricia's ability to destroy the larger one. I didn't want us to rush into marriage to prove she had failed. Most of all, I needed to know his boundaries would remain even after he felt secure that I wasn't leaving. What would make you feel safe again, he asked. Time. And not having to supervise your choices. The answer hurt him, but he accepted it. We didn't set another date. I moved some of my belongings out of our apartment permanently, but left a few boxes there. We started having dinner together once or twice a week. Sometimes it felt almost normal. Patricia didn't receive the reconciliation she expected. Andrews spent his birthday with Angela and me instead of attending the dinner his parents planned. He mailed Dennis a Father's Day card, but didn't visit. According to Jason, Patricia still expected Andrew to return and apologize. He hadn't. That was the only karma I needed. Not humiliation. Not revenge. Just Patricia discovering that her son was finally willing to let her be upset. I still loved Andrew. Love didn't disappear when I canceled the wedding. Trust did. It was returning slowly, not through promises or another ring, but through choices I no longer had to demand. Maybe we would eventually marry. Maybe we wouldn't. For the first time since Patricia sat across from me at that kitchen table, I didn't feel pressured to decide my entire future immediately. But I still wondered whether canceling the wedding was the only thing that could have forced Andrew to change, or whether I had walked away just as he was finally learning how to protect our relationship. So, was I right to call off the wedding, or should I have given him one final chance before leaving?